doing this? After all,
So how far can your electric unicycle go?
curiosity often leads to trouble.
That is probably the question I get most frequently about my wheel, but it's also the one question I find the most difficult to provide a truthful answer to. This week, exactly how much range would you be able to get out of that shiny new electric unicycle you're interested in, and how to stretch that range out further once you get it. And I attempt to make it to Sprain Ridge Park and back, a 60 miles trip on the Veteran Patton, which I had only previously gotten 25 miles out of. Would I be able to cover the distance, or is it going to be the walk of shame for me? Uh-oh. All right, it's tilting back. Roll the intro. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and help spread the uni gospel. So I made this trip to Sprain Ridge about 2 years ago, since it had some of the nicest off-road trails in the New York metropolitan area. But last time when I made this trip, I took the train on the way up because I was riding the Hsiang S18, and there's just no way that wheel with half the battery capacity of the Patton I'm riding today to be able to make that 60-mile trip and still have enough juice left over so that I can actually ride the park. So what made me think that even with twice the battery pack size that the Veteran Patton would be able to make the 60 miles trip, when I myself had said previously that I was only able to get 25 miles out of it. The thing is that when it comes to electric unicycle, your range really depends on a whole slew of factors, both external and internal. From how the internal electrical system is balanced between the battery pack, the controller, and the motor, to external factors like rider weight, speed, road conditions, and so on. Oh, it's Fleet Week. I didn't even realize that. Intrepid seems like the perfect spot to visit on Memorial Day this weekend. Look at this line. Oh my gosh. Typically when I test a new electric unicycle, I ride as hard as I can to maximize wheel performances and to stay as close to max speed for as long as I'm able to, which also usually produce the worst possible range result, a worst case scenario essentially, except that unlike a vehicle with internal combustion gas engine, the differences between the maximum amount of range you can get on an electric unicycle versus my worst case scenario is actually a lot more, like by a factor of 2 or 3 or even more. Because electric unicycle output is the sum of battery, controller firmware, and motor design. Even in a controlled environment where all external factors being equal, you would not get the same range result from two electric unicycles even if they were to share similar specifications. For instance, you would not get the same range from a 2000 watt-hour Goat wheel as compared to a 2000 watt-hour Emotion, just because of the difference in philosophy those two companies have towards the programming of their firmware. Which is why you should consider my reporting of the worst case scenario range I get from my tests as sort of relative to one another as compared to my other reviews. Like, you can safely expect to get about 2 to 3 times the range from the Veteran Sherman S as compared to the Patton, even though the battery on the Sherman S is only 50% larger. So I didn't do quite so hot last time when I visited Sprain Ridge, because the S18, as good as it was, really wasn't quite up to the challenge of that park. It didn't have enough torque nor suspension travel to tackle multiple sections of the trail, something I had suspected, which is why I visited early in spring to avoid the mountain biker crowd so as to not embarrass myself. But this time I have the Patton. So let's see how the 2023 state-of-the-art EUC tech holds up against the gnarly challenge of the off-road trail this time. Now the biggest factors when it comes to EUC range is actually ride styles. You may have noticed that different EUC reviewers report vastly different range performances even on the same wheel, because we all ride differently. If you're a sensible and reasonable rider and limit your speed to the 10 to 20 miles per hour range without a whole lot of hill climb or acceleration or braking, you'll likely get the optimal range. And since I'm neither sensible nor reasonable, like a sugar rush crazed child, boundaries
are required. First, I disable high-speed mode. Let's have none of that nonsense, please. Then I set the OS tilt back to 50% PWM to further reduce the inclination for any sort of fun. Next, I increase tire pressure to 35 psi to reduce rolling resistance in the hope of increasing efficiencies. And finally, I plan a route that kept me mostly on bike paths so that I ride like a chill bicyclist rather than an aggressive New York City motorist in survival mode. And I think our plan had worked. I just rolled past the George Washington Bridge, which is about at the 10 miles mark, and I checked the battery and we're still at 100%. More accurately, we're actually at 124 volt, which means that we have consumed about 2 volt to cover the last 10 miles. But keep in mind that the volt to mile ratio is not exactly linear because efficiency deteriorates along with overall pack voltage. So as you deplete your battery life, you're not getting as much range out of a single volt. So let's not get too confident just yet. But I do have to say that I am actually enjoying the slower pace of ride. It's a beautiful sunny day and I'm on a nice trail along the Hudson River, and sometimes it is nice to just chill and enjoy the scenery. We got a small section of street ride. Okay, so we're on the north end of Broadway and there's a bridge that actually takes us to Bronx. So I think if I just follow Broadway all the way north, it will actually connect with Van Cortlandt Park. And then on the north end of the Van Cortlandt Park, we'll be able to get ourselves onto the bike path that will eventually take us further north to Sprain Ridge. I'm doing well when it comes to range, but I'm not doing so well when it comes to time. It's been an hour, so I will have to quicken up my pace.
The other change I made is removing the 2 upper front lean pads so as to make seated riding a bit easier to do. Electric unicycle, or more accurately a fat 5'6" dude leaning straight into the wind, is terrible from an aerodynamic perspective, and the smaller I can make my profile, the better it is. I actually don't ride seated very often since for me it reduces leverage on the wheel and by extension how quickly I can accelerate or brake and react. With the unpredictable condition I usually ride in, seated riding is unfortunately more of a rare luxury.
But on this ride, comfort is a bit more crucial since I need to leave enough stamina so I can tackle the trails at Sprain Ridge. And those trails were no joke. They were windier, rockier, and more challenging than any of the prior off-road trail I've ever done before. And on the S18, I was mostly sticking to the green trails and really barely keeping up. But hopefully with the Patton, I'm gonna do a bit better this time. All right, we have 22 miles on the clock now, and we got 3 more miles to go. We are at 118 volts, so we consume a total of 18 volts and cover 22 miles. And this is mostly me riding between 10 to 20 miles per hour. Ideal condition, I would say. Probably can eke out a bit more range if you go even slower at like around 10 miles per hour, if anyone have the patience to be riding at that kind of speed. But so far so good. I'll check in once we actually get to Sprain Ridge, which should not be long. After 3 hours, we made it to Sprain Ridge. I'm gonna give my legs a bit of a break before we tackle the trails. And it seems like my effort to baby the Patton had really paid off. We're still at 70% and 116 volt, which means that we burned 10 volt and made 26 miles. At this rate, I think we may be able to pull 75 miles out of this wheel. I'm gonna disable the 50% PWM tilt back so I have access to the full capability of this wheel for the off-road trails. However, this kind of rides tend to be slower, with most of the voltage draw coming from torque and hill climb, which this wheel does seem pretty well optimized for, and based on past experience, does pretty well range-wise. I will have to keep a close eye on the voltage since I do want to leave enough gas in the tank so I can make it home. See, this is what I'm talking about. Look at that drop. I don't think this is actually a trail, but if you're brave enough, you can take it. Now, the regular off-road spot for the few dedicated off-road trail rider in New York City is Cunningham Park, which also has some decent blue and also I think 1 or 2 black trails, and is also a lot closer. Whoa! Makes a huge difference because many of the EUC riders do not own a car and rely on their electric unicycle as their primary means of getting from point A to point B. Not having a wheel that is capable of not just making it to the riding spot, but also having enough battery so that you can actually really ride once you get there makes or break an off-road trail wheel for us. But I definitely like the trails here quite a bit more than Cunningham. Not only is it more varied, it also feels a good bit more open.
Hour of trail riding, but unfortunately with the daylight fading and my battery pack starting to run low, it's time to head back.
Alright, so we covered 3 fun-filled miles in Sprain Ridge. It was a whole lot of climb, and it's reflected in voltage consumption since I now down to 60% or 113 volt. So that is a volt a mile, roughly at 60%. I didn't even enable the PWN tow back on the way home because I think as long as I don't turn on high speed mode, I can basically speed as much as I want up to that limit of 34 miles per hour, and I'd be able to make it home. And the Patton was incredible at Sprain Ridge. I gotta say that I can not pin a single instance of me not being able to tackle an obstacle to it. Rather that it always had plenty of torque when you need it. As a matter of fact, it spun out on a few occasions, and it really came down to my lack of experience with riding off-road, which is exactly what you want out of the wheel. One that is powerful enough that it raises the skill ceiling for what is required to properly ride it.
I was also pretty beat after Sprain Ridge, having rode continuously with only a few short breaks for 6 hours straight by this point, and all I wanted was to make it home as quickly as I'm able to, and the closer I got, the faster I rode, and that pace will eventually get me in trouble.
We really blast past that last 15 miles and we're now back in Bronx. Again, just to illustrate how big of a difference your ride behavior have on the range. When I was in high speed mode and really pushing this wheel, I was getting somewhere around 25 miles and then that's it. But when you ride chill, you really can stretch the battery out quite a bit.
Despite the optimism, with the higher speed I was now going through my battery voltage at a much higher rate.
Maybe a little bit too confident in the range capability of the Patton. I am at 97 volt and the wheel is giving me voltage warning. I should still probably be fine. Not very happy. I got a little bit impatient and decided to take the street. The penalty of faster speed and more aggressive riding is there you go. That's what you get for trying to go fast. Uh-oh. All right, it's tilting back. All right. All right, low battery mode on. That should be enough range to get us home.
So low battery mode let you drain your cell past the recommended threshold just to squeeze out a bit more range for you. Convenient when you're running into situations like this. Not something that you should regularly rely on because it's not great for cell life. With the help of the low battery mode, I was able to make it home with the wheel at 0% and 93 volt left. Alright, that was a very long ride. I'm exhausted. For the return trip, I definitely rode a good bit faster than on the way there. I was averaging between 20 and 30 miles per hour. Got the wheel to beep a few times actually on the way back when I switched to street. If I rode the same way as I did on the way up, I probably wouldn't even need to rely on the low battery mode. So what have I learned on this ride? Patience and perseverance? More like pack a sandwich next time so I won't be in as much of a hurry to get home more like. So are you willing to slow that ride down and smell the flower, or is 15 to 20 your sweet spot already? Well, that is what the comment section below is for. And you know what? Once again, I ramble on too long and somehow managed to waste another 15 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description below if you enjoy and like to support my work. And as always, as much as we all love electric unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheel is to grow as a community. So tell your friend, teach them how to ride and get them hooked. Until the next video, thank you.